On this episode of The Naked Entrepreneur, Dan Martell, accomplished serial entrepreneur and angel investor.
Layoffs, if you will. We were like a 27-person company, and we let 2 people go, but which made no sense because we were growing 250%. Like, what are you doing? When people say you can't do something, it's like, that's just ridiculous.
Gasoline for the fire, right?
I have to
stir it up.
You have to do that.
So if it's not the money, what motivates you to get out of bed every day? So you've got a 9-point cultural value system, and when you put it all together, it stands for Porch
Fest.
Porch Fest. Okay, so walk me through. P.
The Naked Entrepreneur starts now.
Welcome to The Naked Entrepreneur. I'm Dr. Sean Wise, and today I'm joined by the founder of Freshbooks, Mike McDerment. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you
Thanks for having me, Sean.
I want to start off, as we start off every interview, with the elevator pitch for Freshbooks.
Okay. Freshbooks is a simple cloud-based accounting software designed for what we call invoice-driven small business owners. So people who get paid for their time and expertise, lawyers, designers, that kind of thing.
Now, you rescue more than 10 million customers on a regular basis. What's the one common thread these customers all have in common?
Yeah, so we serve the engine of the economy, small business owners. Really all they have is time. Time to apply themselves, to serve their clients. And so, the common thread there is they want to spend more time serving their clients and doing, that kind of work and less time doing administrative work. And so, we help people save about a week a month running their business, and that's huge for a small business owner who either bills by the hour or is a one-man band.
So you talked about small business being the backbone of our economy, and I agree. While startups are sexy, it's the small and medium-sized enterprises that really drive the economy, that make up 97% or more of our companies today.
Yep.
Why did you choose that segment, a segment which is notoriously hard to go to market towards?
I think, as is the case with many entrepreneurial stories, it wasn't really a deliberate choice. Like, I wish I could tell you, walk to the whiteboard, carved up the market, and these were the folks we were going to go after. The reason we serve them is because, I am that customer, and I was that customer. And so I was running a small design shop, helping small businesses build websites, and using Word and Excel to bill my clients. Accidentally saved over an invoice one day and said, there's got to be a better way of doing it. And so I built a simple system where my clients could view and receive invoices online, and that was the genesis. That was, many years ago now. It's about 12 years ago, and ended up spending about 3 years in my parents' basement trying to turn that thing I built for myself into something other people would sign up for.
Now, you built the product that you yourself needed, but you were a design firm to start with. Do you remember the time when you officially said, time to turn off the lights of the old and focus 100% on the new? Was that a tough thing to do?
Well, here's the challenge. It's not a tough thing. Once you get the bug of a product company, I think all you want to do is work on that thing and bring it to life. It really is a little bit different than client service. And the challenge is you got to fund it somehow. So for a number of years, including the 3 years we were in my parents' basement, I had both businesses running. And what I was able to do is just kind of gradually get my time to about 80% on the startup, which was Freshbooks, and 20% on the client time. And then eventually, we ultimately sort of fired all our clients. They were great clients, but we said, listen, it's time to shift our focus and put them in good hands with other folks and dedicated ourselves to Freshbooks.
Now, you're running a design firm, you're enjoying it, you find a need that you want to build to. A lot of people have difficulty understanding why someone moves from a service business to a product business. Looking back at it, how do you differentiate the two? Was it the scale you were seeking? Was it the retained earnings you were hoping to get? You're a service business doing design, and then you evolve into a product business serving other companies. Tell me about that.
I think I think there are people in this world who are going to wind up being entrepreneurs no matter what path they head down, and I'd put myself in that bucket. And so, I can't say I carved this thing up saying I want to achieve this kind of financial profile and run a business like this. I really just followed my nose. And so, I saved over an invoice by accident. I built a tool. I built that tool. I started to realize other people would like this, and one thing just sort of led to another. I will say, along the way, I studied business in school, but it didn't really prepare me for all the things involved with building a product company. And so one of the great gifts of my last sort of decade has been this, just enormous learning curve, from learning how to build a product to, trying to learn how to run a company and hire and build a team and all these things that sort of came out of it. And each of those is a very deep thing to get into, and the kind of thing that you never really stop learning on. And so, now that I got a taste of that, and I really loved it.
So I think lifelong learning is a common thread we hear a lot, and you mentioned the other common thread, that school doesn't always prepare you for the tools you need. Go back to those early days. How did you learn those skills? Did you watch YouTube videos? Did you have a mentor? Was there a book that guided you? Or did you just sort of try and figure it out as you went?
Yeah, I got to tell you, we were in the wilderness. We were completely sort of lost. And I had these little bits of knowledge from the work I was doing for my clients in terms of, for example, helping customers find us and signing up and trying to do that sort of profitably. But there were all manner of things that we really did not know. And, this is like 2003, 2004, 2005. The internet was just getting started even, right? And so the kind of knowledge, whether it be about finance, about team building, about all these things that you can actually get access to on the internet today, whether it's through YouTube, which wasn't really around at that time, or just a variety of websites, it didn't exist. So we were doing a lot of stuff from first principles. We tried to network in Toronto. It was very early days there. We met a couple people, but we were as far ahead as pretty much all the people we met. And so gradually over time started building a network outside of Toronto, and helped, met some mentors and advisors who helped me kind of piece this stuff together.
Now, you and I are contemporaries. We first got into business around the dot-com boom, and then when you moved into Freshbooks, it was sort of moving towards Web 2.0. Those early years, you often heard, you can't do it in Canada. You got to go south. But yet you've done it in Canada. Tell me why you stayed in Canada and why you were happy that that happened.
Yeah, so if you go back to kind of what makes me tick, I like challenge and personal growth. And so, I see, and when people say you can't do something, it's like, that's just ridiculous.
Gasoline for the fire,
now
right?
I have to
Stir it up.
have to do that. So, and I think increasingly, so that's where it started, and I was like, I don't know why we can't do this here. And then I started looking forward, and I try to make my decisions today, imagining myself 30 years from now and looking back. And beyond building a company, I think it'd be really, and we're trying to build a global technology company headquartered in Toronto. The notion of looking back and having built, maybe a multi-thousand person company here in Toronto, that's one way of giving back to our hometown, and also increasingly helping people believe it can be done here. I think that is what Canada and Toronto, the hometown, is missing, is people who believe it can be done. Because until you believe, it's not going to happen.
Well, and I think you're going to be and are currently someone who represents that it can happen. And as we move into the sort of third wave of the internet businesses, it seems more and more Canadians are coming home or staying home.
Coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur.
Good enough is not good enough. We want excellence.
So you've got a 9-point cultural value system, and it's, when you put it all together, it stands for Porch Fest. Porch Fest. Okay, so walk me through. P.
All coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur. Mike McDerment, founder of Freshbooks, has always been entrepreneurial. As a kid, he had a lemonade stand, a car washing business, and even designed video games. Mike found his true passion in supporting small businesses, who he deems the unsung heroes of the economy. Mike spent 3.5 years working out of his parents' basement to grow the company, which today serves more than 10 million customers and has more than 200 employees.
Welcome back to The Naked Entrepreneur. With me today, the founder of Freshbooks, a cloud-based accounting software, Mike McDerment. Mike, I want to go back to the early days, back when you were a wee lad, before Freshbooks, before your working life. Now, you're the son of an entrepreneur and a corporate lawyer. What did you take away from your parents in those early days that you still use today?
Yeah, so my dad was a corporate lawyer, and I think his work ethic, his integrity, and his sense of responsibility, were really sort of drilled into myself and my siblings. There are 4 of us. I'm the baby, and then my mom was, I call her an entrepreneur. I don't know if she would have called herself that, but she started up a series of things, in sort of the health and mental health, looking like she did a lot of early child education stuff. So she was kind of an inspiration in creating things and getting them going and drawing people towards you to get programs off the ground. And she was very successful at that over the years. So good role models for sure.
And what do you think that they taught you that today, running a 200-person business, still resonates?
I think the thing that I will always be grateful to, the most grateful for, besides the support, and I think that was a big part of it, but it's just the value set. My parents were great, and my mom continues. My dad passed away, but they really instilled a strong sense of values in myself and my siblings, and that is really the basis, I think, of building an enduring company. Right? You have a value set, and you stick to it, and you reinforce it, and I think that is the biggest thing.
So if I were to go to your newest hires at Freshbooks and ask them to talk about the corporate culture, to ask them to talk about what values Freshbooks holds dear, what do you think they would comment?
Well, they'd be able to list off, we have an acronym for the 9 values we have, which is Porch Fest, and they could tell you about them. And
so I got to go a little slower. So you've got a 9-point cultural value system, and when you put it all together, it stands for Porch
Fest.
Porch Fest. Okay, so walk me through. P.
Yeah. So P is passion, which is really about if you were you love what you do, and if you weren't doing it here, you'd be doing it somewhere else, right? And it's about working on your craft. So next one is O is ownership, which is about really responsibility and accountability. R, results. We got to get things done. C is change. There's so much change in building a business like ours that valuing the growth that comes from that and being open to the change is really key. H is honesty, about straightforward and direct communication. Fun is F, and it's about making time for having fun, and we try to do a good job of that. E stands for empathy, and it's really about listening. It doesn't mean you necessarily agree with folks, but at least you're hearing them completely, and it's amazing how many times people will think they're listening, but they're really not. So that's a key one. S is strive, which is about sort of pushing yourself and not accepting. Is it good enough? Is not good enough? We want excellence. And then finally, T is about trust, and so this is really giving trust to earn trust.
And when you put that all together, you get Porch Fest.
Yes.
Now I have to ask, was that a mindful approach? Did you sit down and figure out this is what I want to represent? Did you look at it retrospectively? Did you say, we're onboarding a bunch of employees, I better make an acronym?
Yeah, like so many things in building a business, it's kind of an iterative process. Okay. And if I started another business, I would know that I need to establish something like this, and I'd probably construct it deliberately. But in our case, we, through a series of days, what we called sort of values days, we had the whole team come together, and we had to figure out what they were. And so we talked about the qualities of the people and the environment, and they sort of bubbled up these words, and that's how we ended up with it. And then they were not put into one of a guy named John actually turned it into that acronym. So that's it was not it came sort of very organically over a period of time, and but they've been solid, right? It's and very helpful. Setting up a value set like this is really helpful because people actually need some structure and some guardrails to know, sort of what's in. And then in the rare times where there's interpersonal difficulties or what have you, instead of saying, hey, you are doing this or what have you, it's great to be able to reference something like values and say, listen, like, hey, I'm not sure you're actually, living empathy right now. We're having a conversation. I'm not feeling heard. Can we just start again and make sure that you're actually taking it in as opposed to just listening to your own head and what you want, right? And so that gets very helpful because it's impersonal and it grounds people back to how we do business at Freshbooks.
Coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur.
You literally see our impact in the neighborhood with restaurants and all these things, and that's a feel-good kind of thing. It helps with recruiting. It helps with retention. It helps with keeping the trains running on time.
All coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur.
You talked a little bit about the value that culture can bring, the impact it can have.
Yes.
What about the financial side of things? So to keep a culture strong, to keep people focused, you have to invest not only in recruiting the right people, but in maintaining it and having the right support mechanisms. What about the financial benefits of having a strong, positive culture? How has it helped Freshbooks to grow as fast as it has? How has it helped you to attract talent? How has it saved you money, maybe in turnover? How do you think culture impacts the bottom line?
So I think it's huge, and I think every great company, if you go and study them, they ultimately have a very special culture. And I just remember that getting drilled into me back in the basement days. And I had some advisors who were really big on culture. So I think, first of all, it really is about who you bring in the door. And when I interview folks, I'm banging through my head and make sure checking off the values kind of thing. Or if I'm uncertain about somebody, it's like maybe it's one of these values that seems off. So you get people in there with those shared values. Diverse people, diverse interests, ethnicities, backgrounds, whatever, but shared value set. And then so what's great about that is you get all those folks together with that common sort of value system, and it helps with recruiting, it helps with retention, it helps with keeping the trains running on time, because instead of we do pretty well these days with pretty low level / not really any politics, and I believe our value system is a big part of achieving that.
I think that's great. Now, you have stated in many interviews that you want to build a great Toronto company, and I think you've done that, although you may think you're still a work in progress. Many people would say that you have done that. You've built a world-leading company in Toronto, which up until recently people weren't believing it was possible. Why?
So Toronto's my hometown, and yeah, it's this huge city. It's the third largest city in North America now, bigger than Chicago. So you just got LA, New York, Toronto. It's huge, but I think Toronto doesn't think like that just yet. I don't think we have that ambition and that sense of self, and I think there's a bizarre, if you get to know the Canadian thing, like we don't want to be the tallest poppy. But at the same time, huge, diverse, intelligent workforce, great schools, great place to build a company. And so, for me personally, somewhere about 2.5 years ago, I realized like getting up in the morning to build this thing in my hometown really kind of struck a chord with me. I'm proud to be sort of working towards that long-term goal and it's a great way to give back to the community here. We're based out in High Park in Toronto, and you can literally see our impact in the neighborhood with restaurants and all these things, and that's a real feel-good kind of thing. We have employees who are living walking distance, from the office now, and I really like that sense of sort of contribution beyond just the business.
So let's go back now more on the business side. Tell me about the early days. Tell me about what product you set out to build and maybe some of those early pivots and what led you to that. I know customer development, customer discovery, working with your end users was key, but from your perspective, when you first started, what were you trying to build?
Yeah. So our story is I'm kind of the pivots are overrated guy. Okay, I think it's become this catchphrase and this nouveau thing. It's you just change direction and blah blah blah. That's my point of view. Some people love pivots; they want to talk about them. For us, it was a very deliberate and persistent approach. We took one thing, which was invoicing your clients, and we just continued to innovate until we were best in class there, and people started to find us. And by golly, there were a lot of people who needed that. And so, I think that is a different approach. It's more a story of sort of persistence and stick with it and go deep down the rabbit hole into something seemingly simple that just kind of opens and unlocks. And I think there's a lot of those kinds of things in business, as opposed to saying, hey, this was hard, I'm just going to try something else and throw stuff at the wall until it sticks. And I think, both approaches can get you somewhere, but I feel like, as an entrepreneur, not enough is sort of given to the stick-to-itiveness these days.
Now, I read recently that you did a strategic alliance with another company and to build out your feature set, the offering to the end customer. Is it tough to do that? Is it tough to decide, I'm not going to build it in-house, I'm going to partner with someone? Or do you simply look for the people who do it already extremely well and try to leverage that? Yeah,
so we pride ourselves on Freshbooks at great user experience, right? We have incredibly high net promoter scores, a la Apple and this kind of thing. And so when you love product that much, you really want to control every single experience. And so I think I think partnerships are part of scaling and growing a business and finding the ways to do that. And so, we were very deliberate about who and why we partnered and what we would get out of that. Did we have enough control of the user experience, of the ability to serve our customers? Because customer service is a huge part of that user experience. And so, I think just speaking broadly and less specific about FreshBooks, it's you need to know the DNA of your own company. Right. In our case, it was user experience, and then solve for partners who can enable that, because not everyone will be able to be more concerned with whether it's costs or marketing, whatever it is. And so you got to figure out what the right business decision is for you. And so it's been a learning experience, and I think I look forward to learning more about partnering with more companies over time.
Coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur.
You spend your first month in customer service, and our belief is during that month you're going to learn the product, you're going to learn our customer, and you're going to learn our culture. To that diversity, it's not just diversity inside your company, it's getting some of those diverse views from outside.
All coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur.
You're very customer-centric. You've said a lot about the design experience, making sure customers have a value. What about getting from customers? What about listening to customers? How has customer feedback impacted the growth of Freshbooks?
So customer feedback is the heart of growth of Freshbooks. So since the earliest days in the basement, everybody starts at the company in customer service. You spend your first month today, no matter what role you are, if you're a CFO or a designer or whatever it is, you spend your first month in customer service. And our belief is during that month, you're going to learn the product, you're going to learn our customer, and you're going to learn our culture. Okay? You're also going to build this great network inside the company that sets you up to then go and have success. And so, but during that period, you're getting to know our customer and our product and getting imbued with feedback about the product and our client's orientation, which then sort of really informs every decision we make.
Can you think of one customer interaction that really resonates with you?
I remember being out to dinner in Florida. We take our customers out to dinner, and this is years ago, and I met this guy named Terry in Florida, and he told us we have this ability to send invoices, and you can automate sending invoices, so they recur and you don't have to do it. And you can actually set it up so credit cards are automatically charged, this kind of thing. And he was like an IT guy who went around to various offices and did this kind of thing. And so we offered a benchmarking service, so you could see like, hey Terry, you're in IT, this % of your revenue comes from recurring invoicing, and you're at the bottom of the spectrum. Okay? And he told me he changed his business model to set up more recurring contracts and all these kinds of things
Because of
his
that
IT
sort of
service
feedback
business
loop.
because of that feedback loop, and ended up ultimately having more income, consistency and smoothing, and actually made more money and had better relations with his client from it. So that to me is that was nice reinforcement of some of the things we do. And at those dinners, often folks are, whether they know it or not, telegraphing to me like what we're going to do next. And so I love spending time with our customers.
Now, you mentioned your management team a little earlier. I know recently your CFO left for greener pastures. How do you deal with challenges like that?
I think, so Mark is a wonderful guy, our CFO who just moved on. I think anytime you're growing a business, there's a whole bunch of, stages you got to go through. And so, Mark was a fantastic partner to me for a number of years, even before he came to Freshbooks. And, we're a company that's twice the size that, of any company Mark had run before. And, he basically decided, for where we're going, I don't even want to be that kind of CFO, so I'm going to go back to doing some of the stuff I did before, and that's a wonderful thing. I mean, I think that demonstrates some of
know your niche.
the EQ and the IQ that we like to have at Freshbooks, and so it's a pretty straightforward conversation. Is like, hey, Mark, we're going to support you with this, and we're still working together now. He's done a wonderful job with transition, and we're looking for a new CFO, but Mark is still very much a part of the equation, and I'm sure he will be for years.
Let's talk about that. So some people are big into bottom-up hiring. So taking the bookkeeper, making them the accounts receivable VP, then moving them forward. Some are more interested in top-down hiring, stealing a CFO from another organization, maybe one that you respect and want to grow towards looking like one day. What's your approach going to be?
Well, I think when you're building an organization, you actually need both. There's this sort of buy and the build. And in any given role, I think your decision set is sort of different. And so ideally you build all sort of roles up, and we do a lot of that at Freshbooks. People moving from service to, we have people who are product managers today that started in customer service, that kind of thing. And so that's great. But sometimes, you may not have the person you need for that next role in-house. And other times it's really good to get, a fresh perspective from outside. Back to that diversity. It's not just diversity inside your company, it's getting some of those diverse views from outside. So the CFO candidate, we don't have somebody who, is able to play that role in-house today, and that's a very natural thing. And we're looking for somebody who, has probably seen some things that we haven't seen yet to help us lead through that next piece. And that's, I'm really excited about it, and in the process of trying to find my right fit now.
Coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur.
I feel bringing on investors is an enormous responsibility. And so I want to ensure success. You haven't won, you've just actually started. You've reset the clock, and whatever you've accomplished to date, it's like, doesn't matter. Now you got a whole new set of expectations going forward and a really high bar to clear.
All coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur.
stick with the idea of the growth phase. You resisted or didn't put yourself out for a long time looking for venture capital. When you did look, when you did start that process, you finished incredibly strong with a $30 million raise. Why was that the time to raise capital? Why did you not do what so many entrepreneurs do, which was run around chasing investments? Instead, you ran around and chased customers.
Yeah, I think people have the wrong orientation as it pertains to capital. I sort of took time. I think you got to understand the other side of the equation a little bit. And so, what I realized is, I feel bringing on investors is an enormous responsibility. And so I want to ensure success. And the best time to raise, sort of capital is when you've de-risked the business, whether it be through technology or business model or whatever it was. And so we had a number of problems to solve, building a team, building market-beating products, all these things before, I was really comfortable. I thought it was time to bring on institutional capital of this nature. And so we solved those problems first and brought in the capital. And I think that set us up to be successful with our new partners and, and for the business longer run.
And you have some great partners in your venture capitalist firms and institutions that have backed you. What do you hope to accomplish with these proceeds? What is the use of funds going to mean? I mean, $30 million is a large Series A, but it's also an appropriate Series A considering that you've built a fundamental business over a 10-year period. It isn't as if you woke up one day and said, yesterday I started the business, today I took $30 million. You got it to a certain point. So what's the next phase going to look like?
Yeah, I think it is scale. It's sort of more of the same. We serve this enormous market, right? There's over 30 million small businesses in North America. There's 17% of them are using a product today. And so there's a big growth opportunity for us at FreshBooks, and we're the leader for service-based businesses today, and that segment is growing. So, very, very exciting time for us. And to be honest, $30 million in the context of that is not even. It's going to sound crazy, but it's not even that much capital, right? And so, this is sort of a good start. We're going to prove out the next piece of our business, and then see, do we take on more capital? Are we running under our own steam? We'll see.
Okay. Is there a downside to taking external capital?
I think, this was a very personal decision as a founder and a CEO, figuring out, hey, new expectations come, all these things. And so for me, this goes back to how do you make a decision like this? Because I wrestled with it for a long time and said no for a long time. And then,
because even before this, you had people approaching you.
Oh, yeah, I've spoken with hundreds of people over the years. I've had people offer to just write us a check, and I said no, like all these kinds of things. And then, it came to the place where when I started to look at, 30 years looking back, what would I regret? And I don't want to leave anything on the table, right? I want to build this organization. I don't want to think like we held ourselves back. And capital was the next thing to getting us there. So you raise the capital.
Raise the capital. How did you choose between the partners that you could have gotten money from?
So I think, again, the good fortune over the better part of a decade to speak with hundreds of people who are, investors. And, you start to develop pattern recognition. It's like hiring people or whatever it is. You develop pattern recognition. And so for us, we were looking for firms who, had been there and done that. Who were actually very successful themselves, so they weren't counting on us to, just make their book. They had other really strong investments, and that just takes a little bit of the pressure off. The funds to be, sort of new, which means that we have a long runway.
So you were at the beginning of their 7-year kind of cycle, not in the last month they had to cash out.
That's right, beginning of their 10-year cycle. And we set expectations very clearly that it's like, listen, we're building this business for the long term, and we don't want to be forced to do something because we want that the length of our runway, because we recognize that you got to return the capital at some point. So just make sure that timeline's enough. And then it was really about interpersonal and almost like value set of the people. There's different kinds of investors, folks who like to roll up their sleeves and get super involved. And there's others who sort of back a management team and believe in a company and a market. And that was more the path that we wanted to go down, is find good partners who were supportive of us and what we were doing, and that's what we did.
Any advice for those people who are going to go out and look for their own Series A financing? All of these are so specific. So why don't we start with the emotional piece? Is just make sure you know what you're getting into, right? Because I think a lot of people think of fundraising as success.
right? Which is it's really the beginning of this starting
People
gun.
think that if I raise a fund, I should make a press release. I've won. When in fact, all they've done is given you fuel for the fire.
You haven't won. You've just actually started. You've reset the clock, and whatever you've accomplished to date, it's like doesn't matter. Now you got a whole new set of expectations going forward, and a really high bar to clear. And I don't think people get that necessarily, right? And so I think the first thing, there are people who do, and they really want. They come with the DNA of like, I just want to build this big thing, and if I fail, that's okay, right? And I love that. It's great. Go raise some venture capital. You're comfortable with that. There's other people who, kind of have their baby over here, and they want the money so they can do stuff, but they don't really want a partner. And that's another group over there. And I think it's really important as an entrepreneur to figure out where you live on that spectrum and make sure that you choose wisely.
Well, I think you've chosen wisely. And when we come back from this commercial break, we'll talk some more with Mike McDerment from Freshbooks.
Coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur.
Layoffs, if you will. We were like a 27-person company, and we let 2 people go, but which made no sense because we were growing like 250%. Like, what are you doing?
If it's not the money, what motivates you to get out of bed every day?
All coming up on The Naked Entrepreneur.
Welcome back to The Naked Entrepreneur. I'm Dr. Sean Wise, and joining me today is Mike McDermott, founder of Freshbooks. Mike, we're coming to the final segment, the rapid fire questions. I'm going to ask you some questions. Give me the first things that come to your mind. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay, let's start the clock. We're ready. Here we go. Can entrepreneurship be taught, or are you born an entrepreneur?
I lean more to the born.
Okay. What is the worst advice you've ever received? I won't ask you who, but what was the worst advice?
I'm trying to think. I think anything that starts with do it for the money.
Do it for the money. So if it's not the money, what motivates you to get out of bed every day?
For me, it's challenge, yeah, pretty much.
What's been the biggest challenge to date?
All of it. There are so many at the same time and on different vectors, but that's kind of the fun of it.
Okay. What's the best thing about being an entrepreneur?
I think I see being an entrepreneur as a little bit like being an artist, okay? Which is, I think of an artist, you have a canvas and you paint stuff on the canvas. And I think as an entrepreneur, you get to build a business. And that's the really exciting thing for me. It starts with a product maybe, and then you start to build a business all around that. And like getting the pieces all right is a huge multi-layer chess fiasco that is a lot of fun and a very creative pursuit.
So let's stick to your metaphor. If you are painting the Freshbooks canvas and we come to see it in 50 years, what are you hoping people see in the art?
I hope they see an enduring company that builds some of the world's best leaders.
Okay. What's your greatest fear?
My greatest fear, this is one like what keeps you up at night. It literally changes day to day, sometimes hour to hour, week to week. And so, I think, I guess kind of not giving it everything and looking back and feeling like you left something, on the field.
Now, Brad Feld, a legendary venture capitalist from Techstars and Founder Group, he said that every single one of his portfolio companies has a moment where they're about to die, they're about to thrive, a moment where they can't make payroll or they're about to make payroll. What's your moment so far?
We had one of those back in 2008 when, effectively we had a little angel investment back in the day. And it kind of fell through on account of the economy, but we knew it was coming, and we'd already started behaving like it was there, and we had to ratchet everything back. And it was a terrible thing because we ended up, the only time we've ever done, sort of layoffs, if you will. We were like a 27-person company, and we let 2 people go, but which made no sense because we were growing like 250%. Like, what are you doing? But it was a terrible. It was the holiday, just before the holidays, and we were wringing our hands like, what are you gonna? It was awful. I feel, and then Anyway, so that was, we thought we would lose the whole company. We came out of it ultimately pretty well, and we had to take the steps to do it. But it sort of made no sense, but nonetheless was like an existential kind of threat.
So if FreshBooks is your baby and your co-founders are your marriage partners, how has that impacted the personal side? I know you were married. I know you have a child on the way. How do you think that will impact this? How do you think the change in family status impacts you as an entrepreneur and the business itself?
Well, I think my parents set a great model of stability in building the family I grew up in. I feel very, very lucky in my choice of my wife and her family, but also my co-founders. And so, I think there's going to be, we've got a kid on the way. I tend to worry about problems before they happen. And so, it's 3 months away and I'm like, it just sounds completely exhausting to me and I'm terrified, to be completely honest. But I know I'll adjust, and I know I'll have a lot of support thanks to those people around me. So I think I'll probably end up leaning on them a little more, but I trust they're going to be there for me.
What's the one book you think all entrepreneurs should read before starting their business?
Stage dependent, but I'm going to go with E-Myth. I think it really helps. So much of building a business is the people stuff, and I think E-Myth by Michael Gerber is a great for people who are founders and what have you, trying to piece together the various roles and how they fit together. I think can be really transformative. It's the one I recommend the most to people having early stage problems.
What do you wish you knew before starting your business?
I am glad I did not know how hard it is.
Okay.
I'm glad I didn't know how long it would take.
What makes it so hard? Is it the uncertainty? Is it the long hours? Is it the lack of family business balance?
Yeah, I think I don't think anyone would really sign up if they knew what it would sort of take. I mean, it's this flip thing though, because it's like, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. It's like, I really like playing sports and getting into that kind of thing, and training and all that good stuff. It's not dissimilar to that. You have to immerse yourself in it, and so you kind of either love it or you don't. But I don't think you can conceptually get it until you do it.
How do you unplug?
I shut off Friday nights. Don't look at my phone until like Sunday evening. I'll read the subject lines or something, but I sort of step away from the devices, and I try to basically do chores and be outside on the the weekends, little projects. That's what I like to do to unwind.
Now, you waited 6 years to marry your eventual wife.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
I don't know. I think timing is a thing. If she'd pushed me any sooner than that, I probably would have said, nah, no, not ready, right? So I think that's the honest answer.
Well, let's stick with the family. Now you've got a baby on the way.
Mm-hmm.
20 years from now, what legacy do you wish to have given your child?
Sean, you're killing me here. Baby's not even here.
Not the really easy entrepreneur.
I haven't been really thinking along those lines. I think, I would hope, and I don't know if I'll be able to pull this off, but I'd hope, Freshbooks is enormously successful, and my child feels very supported and like I'm a big part of their life. And I don't know how to, strike that balance, and I don't want to fail it either. So we're gonna figure it out.
Okay, here's hopefully an easier one. If you weren't doing Freshbooks, what would you want to be doing?
I would be building something. What I have found is Freshbooks is not the first business I started, right? Yeah, I'm not, I'm almost like, idle hands make da-da-da-da. I need to be building something.
Okay, well, let's keep talking about building something. 10 years from now, where do you think Freshbooks will be? You got 200 employees now, you're gonna have 500, you're gonna have offices abroad, are you gonna have kicked the person who's ahead of you from first to second?
I think, 10 years from now, I'd hope we build an enduring business here in Toronto. I think, HQ, 10 years HQ, I'd like to see like 1,000 people, something like that. We'll see. And I kind of measure, that says to me a certain scale and presence and durability of a business. But, technology moves fast, and so there's lots we're gonna have to figure out to succeed against that particular goal between here and there.
Well, one of the goals of this show is to share what's tacitly learned with future generations of entrepreneurs. So what advice can you give the students in the audience?
I think, as it pertains to sort of entrepreneurship, I've seen a lot of smart people get into entrepreneurship and, work at something for a year and then decide it's not going and kind of give up, right? And so I think, look around the class and find the people who aren't necessarily the smartest, but have the most persistence and who are kind of
diversity
loyal.
quotient, the ability to get up after being knocked down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's just diversity. I think it's character and stick-to-itiveness and determination, right? Often presents as stubbornness and things like that. But
we call it the adversity quotition in school.
Oh, adversity. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think that's I think that is the you talk to most. They're not like I'm not the smartest person in the room or the company or anything, but I think knowing that and having the ears for those that are smarter and working together with them to figure out the best path we can, I think that is huge. So I'd say self-awareness and determination mixed with a little intelligence. That's probably the combo you're looking for.
Mike, unfortunately our time is coming to a close. So my final question: what advice do you have for future entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think what I would think about if you're thinking about either becoming an entrepreneur or looking for a founder and partnering up with somebody is, that choice is very important. I think it's the most important one I ever made was my choice of co-founders, and my encouragement would be to focus more on the quality of their character than their technical skills, right? And going a little further than that, I think you're looking for people who are self-aware, who are determined, and hopefully smart too, right, to help you get places fast. But I think those are really underrated qualities that will serve you and your team really well. And by the way, if you're an entrepreneur, those might be things you need to work on yourself. So think about that as you go forward too.
Well, I want to thank you, Mike. You've shared a lot. Mike McDerment from Freshbooks. If you want to know more about Freshbooks, head over to freshbooks.com. If you want to learn more about the Naked Entrepreneur, you can see an episode list and watch video at www.nakedentrepreneur.tv. I'm Dr. Sean Wise. Good day and good venturing.